So in today's session, we're going to talk a little bit more about the fitness icon Bill Phillips and his recent 46-day hospitalization from COVID-19. Now, the purpose of this podcast is not to criticize anyone. We want to learn from Bill's story and related stories and see how we can grow from that, okay? So I just want to set the intention, the standard. I have a lot of respect for Bill. He's from Denver, Colorado. I used to live there. I'm pretty sure he trained at Armburst Pro Gym, which is a great gym in Wheat Ridge. He's an icon in the community. He's a New York Times bestselling author of Body for Life, which is actually on my shelf here. So his message is absolutely phenomenal. Now, he got hit pretty hard with COVID-19. And the message here was, hey, if it can hit this big, healthy, strong individual, it can decimate you. Now, the problem with that is what the media is omitting is the fact that Bill took anabolic steroids in the 80s. And I'm going to share with you clips where he admits to this. And again, I'm not here to criticize him. I myself took anabolic steroids in early 2000s, over 20 years ago, friends. So it was a really dumb decision that I made, and I probably maybe impacted my long-term health as a result of that. I used to make these things. I even sold them to football players at the college that I went to. So the purpose of this video is to learn from our past mistakes and to take what the media says with a grain of salt and continue to do your own research. We hear so many stories about this celebrity or this person or this otherwise healthy triathlete that got hit hard, but we always need to dig a little bit deeper. And I want to share that because when you see these pictures, Bill looks really muscular here on the left. He looks to me to be about, 225 to 240 pounds. I don't know his height. Let's just assume he's 5'9" or something like that. He looks to be a big, fit guy. Now, this picture I think was a year later. Here he is, just within the last 8 weeks, coming out of the ICU. He looks to be closer to 70, right? He's really emaciated. So again, these pictures before and after, they really appeal to emotion. They scare people. They're like, wow, if this can happen to this muscular man, then gosh, what about me? I'm like an overweight, person that doesn't even work out. Well, there's more to the story, and this is not the first time that the media has used this story. Another related story, and this was a nurse named Mike Shultz. He was 43 years old. This was from May of 2020. This was big. It was big on Reddit. I remember Tim Ferriss retweeted this story on Reddit and so forth. So his Instagram handle used to be called The Bearded Nurse, and we covered this story, again, because Mike Shultz, this was the story. This was the image that you saw, this big muscular nurse, and here he is pretty emaciated. Well, like I said, as someone who has used steroids before, who has made them and has sold them to athletes and seen how people's physique changes, I can tell you without a shadow of the doubt that Mike was on either HRT or steroids or a combination of two. I don't know the dosages. It's hard to totally figure that out. But when I saw these pictures, it was obvious to me that he had used anabolics. And we know that anabolics, whether it's HRT or using supraphysiologic levels of hormones, like how bodybuilders will use between 500 milligrams of testosterone a week up to 1,500 milligrams of testosterone a week, whereas an HRT dose is more like 100 milligrams to maybe 250 milligrams a week. So we're talking about supraphysiologic levels of testosterone. And guess what those do? Those increase the thickness of your blood and increase the ability of your blood to coagulate and actually cause mechanical or shear stress damage to your cardiovascular system. So we're going to continue on and talk more about what blood tests you may want to consider should anyone in your family have ever used HRT in the past or steroids in the past, and or is just a male that has high cardiovascular risk markers, because these are really sort of under-recognized cardiovascular parameters that a lot of doctors don't really focus on. We're going to talk about the hemoglobin, hematocrit, RDW, RBC, and then also talk about iron and ferritin. Really important as it relates to cardiovascular disease risk. And they often go unnoticed, unfortunately, when it comes to most primary care doctors. So that said, here is a Channel 9 News from Denver. Here's a clip about Bill and his wife. They go through some pictures, and you can really see how much weight he lost after getting pretty ill with COVID-19.
Pictures are taken to remember our trips through life.
That guy is pre-COVID Bill Phillips.
For Bill and Maria Phillips, these memories are difficult to look back on.
And this is Bill after COVID.
Her husband Bill, a former fitness coach, is leaving St. Anthony Hospital 70 pounds lighter after COVID-19 almost killed him.
Having to see Bill go from this person who's so strong and full of life and happy to this person that stand up.
And it didn't help that I could bench press 300 pounds or run a mile straight up a hill.
So again, Bill, we wish you nothing but the best. I'm sure his recovery will get even progressively better and better over time. But I wanted to just point this out. And again, I'm not trying to be super critical. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. We need to learn from people's mistakes, and you can learn from my mistake as well. So when I saw this picture of Bill, and I think this was back in 2016 or something like that, I thought, okay, he's definitely used anabolics. Unless you have, 99.9% of humans do not have genetics to look like this in their 40s, right? So I thought, okay, I wonder what he said or what's been publicly posted about his HRT use or steroid use or anything, because this picture in Outside Magazine was a little bit of a red flag for me. Then when I saw this particular clip on Mark Bell's podcast, I thought, okay, I got to dig a little bit deeper.
Try to figure out how he went from his mom's basement printing steroid magazines to being a multi-millionaire and just a complete ass kicker, basically, in the fitness industry.
So that was a conversation with Mark Bell, the creator of the Slingshot. He's a great guy. He's been on our podcast. I've been on his podcast. So obviously Bill's pretty open and transparent about using anabolics in the past. And I came across this video as well. Now I want you to pay attention to this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it and then talk about those lab markers that I was sharing with you and talk about how this could potentially be related to the fact that he had a rough go with COVID-19.
Did use steroids. When did you first come into contact with steroids, and what prompted you to start using them?
I trained in a gym down in Denver. There were a few big bodybuilders there, and eventually you just start probing and you start asking what's going on, and then you learn about steroids, as any bodybuilder does who hangs out at these hardcore gyms. After getting my butt thoroughly kicked in national competitions, I figured, well, I need to be 20 pounds heavier than I am. I was competing at about 175 pounds, and I wanted to be 195. So the guys, that knew about steroids told me about them, and back then, God, in the early 80s, you could get anything you wanted, anytime you wanted it. So I started on Dianabol, 3 tablets a day, which was 15 milligrams, nandrolone decanoate, and I took 200 milligrams a week with that, and I'll never forget it. I mean, within a matter of 8 weeks, I probably put on 20 to 30 pounds of weight. Most of it was fat-free mass, but you get the bloating and the extracellular, fluid retention. So, but I mean, I have pictures of it. It's such a stunning difference, that 8-week time in my life, and I went from maybe bench pressing 275 to 350. And
were your friends and family and stuff aware of what you were doing, or were they?
Oh, the friends, that you have at that point are all bodybuilders, so they're all using steroids. So it's, the group behavior thing. It's easy to hang out with people who are all doing the same thing. So we were all bodybuilding and taking steroids.
So again, I can relate with that because I was in this circle. I was in the same social environment in college. And here's a few pictures of me, just so you can see the difference. Retaining a lot more water. Obviously, with water comes more weight, which begets more cardiovascular stress on the vessels. Obviously, you absorb and synthesize more iron. Certain forms of anabolics are given to patients with AIDS or HIV positive patients even because they might suffer from anemia. So these are used to do all sorts of different things. And this is why, a lot of endurance athletes actually use anabolics because it increases their hemoglobin and their hematocrit. So again, you get a performance benefit, but at what cost? What is the long-term potential damage to the cardiovascular system? Now, I don't know how many cycles Bill has done or been on, but it sounds like they were a fairly big part of his life. And when I was looking through his recent pictures, I would guess I'd put several $1,000 bet on it that he was on HRT recently. Now, I have no problem with HRT. I plan to eventually be on HRT, late 40s, early 50s. No problems there. But again, we need to understand that should individuals go on HRT, and there's HRT clinics everywhere. HRT, for those that just need a reminder, is hormone replacement therapy. A lot of men are on this, and women too. But we need to understand what these do to our blood work, because there is changes, and that can increase and make us more in terms of our risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So one of the things that this is just individual that I've worked with in the past that went on some SARMs actually, but steroids do this. SARMs, these are selective androgen receptor modulators. So here's the hemoglobin hematocrit. What you want to look for, these again are basically 3 tests. They're very common. You can check it out on our blood work cheat sheet. You can get all of the tests that I recommend on page 1, and page 2 is immune-related biomarkers to the current public health problem. So RBC, RDW, hemoglobin hematocrit, really important. Now, what you see here is these are all increasing. So hemoglobin over 16.5, that is definitely way too high. This individual needs to donate blood and get off whatever he was on. A hematocrit of 50%, over 50%, this really increases the risk of all sorts of shear stress on the cardiovascular system and an increased risk of a stroke. So imagine someone who has done multiple rounds of steroids, and it could have been 20, 30 years ago, has cardiovascular stress related to that, might have, a decline in ejection fraction, and then gets hit with SARS-CoV-2, which ultimately, how this virus affects our body in a negative way and can lead to increased disease severity is related to cardiovascular health. Ultimately, SARS-CoV-2 infection, it's a cardiovascular disease. So if you have poor cardiovascular health, you are going to have a much more severe course of illness. That's inarguable. So we need to understand that. Now, what's interesting about that is, this data is readily available, but most people don't know this. They think about obesity, but part of where obesity increases risk, severity is due to the shear stress and the cardiovascular related stress that's associated with having obesity. So we need to recognize that. So again, now we would also consider, so you might be wondering, so what do you do in this situation? Let's say you're a postmenopausal woman. Now I say postmenopausal because women who are still menstruating usually don't have an accumulation of hemoglobin, hematocrit, and iron in their blood. So usually their blood levels look really good, but once they stop menstruating, these markers increase. So women have a natural way of it's like a natural, they're giving out a lot of blood through their menstrual, regular monthly menstruation. Now with men, we don't have that. So men are prone to accumulating iron and having thick, stagnant blood. So friends, one of the life-saving tools, and this was one of our very first YouTube videos that we published on this channel and podcasts with Ralph Holsworth back in 2014, was all about viscous blood and donating blood. This can be when I talk with my clients, especially male clients, I would say that 8 out of 10 have thick viscous blood. Just by looking, I don't need to see their blood on a petri dish. I just can look at their blood tests or CBC and Chem 24 and see, wow, you would benefit from blood donation. Very, very common. Now, how many lives could we have saved and could we still save by encouraging blood donation, particularly with individuals who have high hemoglobin, hematocrit, RDW, and ferritin and iron? Again, this is a very common pattern that is seen amongst men. Now, what would be interesting is to see what Bill's blood work was and what sort of cardiovascular risk factors, or did he have any scares or stress tests or things like that prior to his COVID-19 diagnosis. Now, it would be interesting to see, if he shares some of that information. We can just, sort of extrapolate or triangulate from past videos and, interviews that he's done to show that he may have caused some of that damage, which could potentially be part of the reason as to why he had a more severe disease state. So I just wanted to share this because whether you know it or not, steroid use and hormone replacement therapy is so rampant. Pretty much every gym you go to, there is at least 3 to 4 steroid users there. This is also more common in women now too than it ever used to be. So we're seeing this, and I want to help people prevent death or prevent severe illness. So it's important to run your labs once a year. If you don't know what to look for, go to our website, highintensityhealth.com, opt in for the free cheat sheet. On page 1 is all the tests that I recommend because this is so important, friends. And if your hemoglobin, hematocrit, RDW, RBC are high, you want to donate blood. You're going to help humanity, help your heart, and help decrease the viscosity of your blood, which is really important. So friends, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out our swag and get a shirt like this, you cannot beat the you-know-what if you're eating this processed crap. Check it out over at myoscience.com. That's MYOXCIENC.com. We have a bunch of new t-shirts and products coming for you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. I'm grateful that you're still here. And if you're on iTunes and you enjoyed this conversation, you can also check out the show notes and the images that we shared here over on YouTube. So that's it for today, friends. We'll catch you on a future video down the road.